Welcome to episode 142 from the Shed End with myself, Theo, and the other Theo. How you doing?
Good. I'm very cold. It's very cold in London. I'm sure it's much more cold up north. Like you're mentioning right before we started recording. But yeah, I've had a good Christmas, good New Year's. Back to reality now with work and the routine. I'm wishing all the subscribers and listeners a happy New Year as well, because it's our first recordings. It's in the 20th of December. We haven't been hiding during that poor form of results. We were just really busy and spending a time with our families. And if I'm completely honest, I think it's a bit of a coincidence that we stopped recording and Chelsea drop a bit of form and drop down the league slightly. So hope now that we get back into the swing of things and start recording, we'll pick up a bit of form. But yeah, I'm good. Other than being quite cold and a bit of a clogged up throat and nose, I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Yeah, no, echo exactly what you said. Happy New Year to all our subscribers, our listeners on the audio version. And yeah, I'm good. I'm back into the full swing of things, just life in general. But yeah, coincidentally, we start recording and Chelsea start picking up points, and it just seems to be the way. But we're going to get into all of that. We're going to try and talk about the recent dip in form, the performances that should have, it may cost us top four eventually in the end. We never know. But transfers as well. There's a lot of transfer speculation around incomings, outgoings at Chelsea in the winter window and also in the summer period as well. And we're going to talk about Morecambe FA Cup. Surely not a cup upset tomorrow. But let's start with the poor results, because we went into that busy period. We spoke about it in the last episode, how, this is a really crucial time for us at Chelsea. We need to try and get some of these games out of the way. We had Everton, Fulham, Ipswich, Crystal Palace, which were kind of the four over that Christmas period, or the build up to Christmas and afterwards as well. But not to register any wins, picking up, I think, 2 points out of a possible 12 or something over that period just wasn't really good enough for Chelsea. And what do you think's gone wrong at Chelsea, and why is it that we can't pick up the results against Ipswich? We can't keep the lead against Fulham as well. What do you think's gone wrong at Chelsea?
Yeah, I mean, like you just mentioned, 2 points out of a possible 12 against those four teams. I know it's no disrespect to those four teams, but if you are in a title race or title contenders, like people were labeling us as before Christmas, then these are the type of games you should be winning and picking up points and not dropping points in the manner we did. I think there's a kind of a mix of things that contributed to our poor form and the fact we dropped points. I think the first one was just purely fatigue. I think a lot of those players, especially Enzo, Caicedo and Nick, given the Lavia injury, given the Dewsbury-Hall injury, were forced to play a lot of football, and they did look tired. I don't think they're purely the problem, but I think they did look very, very fatigued. I also think we're slowly realizing now that Maresca has a bit of a lack of trust or a lack of confidence in a lot of the kind of players that maybe feature on the bench or in the Conference League B team, as we call it. And that's clearly apparent with the lack of substitutes he's been making. I had a bit of a look into this, but we're only three other clubs that made fewer substitutes than us throughout the Premier League.
Okay.
It's Palace and Everton, and we actually only made 73 substitutions. And it just seems like we just always kind of leave them substitutes a bit too late. And I think the average first substitute we've made has always fallen around the 63rd minute, which for me is just, if you're losing a game, you're drawing, you're looking to hold on to a lead even, don't wait until the 63rd minute. I think there's opportunities to make substitutes at half time, which is something, you look back at the Mourinho era, he would just hook off a player at half time if things weren't going right.
Tuchel used to do that as well in his early parts. I know he didn't in the back end of his career at Chelsea, but I know very early on he wasn't scared to take players off.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think we've got to kind of be a bit more ruthless and make the substitutions earlier. But then it goes back to what I said. I think it's just Maresca doesn't trust some of those options on the bench or some of those second choices he has. I also think Jackson's form's dropped off slightly. He doesn't look like the same kind of player we were seeing score goals against West Ham, against Villa, and these type of teams. I think he's only got one goal now in his last 6 games, which is putting way too much reliance on someone like Cole Palmer to perform and get the goals.
Yeah.
And even Cole Palmer, I think, our fault for the goal against Crystal Palace. We saw Noni Madueke try to dribble just on the edge of his box in that game. Then he kind of lost possession. Palmer tried to do it as well in his own half, lost possession. So I think there's a lot of quality players we have, but they're just too individualistic, and they try to kind of want to show off on the ball. Don't do that when you're winning 1-0. Do that when you're winning 4 or 5-0. That's when you can showboat, do your tricks and your flicks. but don't do that when you're 1-0 on the edge of your box or in your own half. And then I think what I mentioned about Jackson, but we're just not clinical enough. We're not taking our chances. Against Fulham, we're 1-0 up, and I think we missed like a series of chances. Same thing against Crystal Palace, and big chances for Jackson. Yeah, sure, maybe I'm being a bit biased here, but I do think we had a lot of misfortune during that period as well. Decisions that went against us. Pickford should have had given away a penalty against Malo Gusto against in the Everton game. In the Palace game, I think we should have had a penalty on Pedro Neto. I think it was Mick Shaw who didn't get anything on the ball and tackled him on the edge of the box or just slightly in the box where the contact was made. And then obviously the Liam Delap penalty was very controversial. Some angles looked like dives, some others in media was the slightest touch, but I don't think there was enough in that for him to go down. So yeah, I think it's a mix of things, and that's why I'm going to say that I think this FA Cup game against Morecambe's come at the perfect timing to maybe get a small break from the Premier League, have a bit of a rest, and try to regain some confidence against the lower league opposition or a League Two opposition, in fact. So yeah, but I just really hope now that maybe we've recouped a couple of players from injury, the likes of Reece James, the likes of Lavia, recalled Anselmino from his loan at Boca Juniors. Perhaps this could be maybe the start of just a bit of an uprise in form. But yeah, I think it's a multitude of things that have contributed to this. I won't call it a blip because I really hope we recover from it. But yeah, hopefully we can bounce back against Morecambe then on Tuesday night against Bournemouth.
Yeah, I mean, the games are still coming thick and fast, aren't they? I agree with a lot of what you said. I think the performances haven't been good enough, just purely down to us, really, as a collective, as a team. I think you look back to the way that we conceded those goals against Fulham, the way that we conceded goals. You can talk about the penalty, Ipswich. It was a poor performance from us against Ipswich. As a whole, I think the refereeing decisions were poor. I think every single one of those, the Everton one, the Crystal Palace, we've made sure the penalty against Ipswich, which I think the FA even came out afterwards and said, or the PGMOL came out afterwards and said that they got it wrong. It shouldn't have actually been a penalty. But it still isn't good enough defensively. I think when we look at our defensive, and we've said it on here so many times, we said it when Thiago Silva was still here, we need leaders on that pitch. We need someone who's going to be a leader, who's not going to take the game by the scruff of the neck. I think I used that word the other day, maybe on a separate video. But someone that's going to calm down the defensive line, who's going to be able to command and control it at times as well. That fine balance between, being aggressive in terms of, ensuring that, other centre backs or the right back, the left back is doing what they're supposed to be doing, but also having that sense of calmness about them as well. We need that in the defensive line. We haven't got it. You look at Virgil van Dijk. I always use him as an example, but you can tell there's a massive difference between when he's in the team and when he's not in the team for Liverpool. Someone that's experienced at that level. We need someone like that in our defensive line because we're relying on Levi Colwill, who is so young, still learning as a quote unquote leader in the team. But he's still learning. It's a lot to have on his shoulders. We haven't got the experience that we thought we would have in Koulibaly, who's now obviously departed. Dizazi isn't good enough. Badiashile, we know, is prone to mistakes. Wesley Fofana can't keep himself fit. There's a bit of, I feel there's a lack of trust with Malo Gusto, with Maresca. I don't think he fully trusts him as a right back. We saw Josh Ashiempol make his debut centre back against Crystal Palace, which I thought he played really, really well. Hard to put a foot wrong, if we're being honest, in the game. But again, there's still elements, like you said, from Maresca that he doesn't trust certain players and at times. I did think as well, the Ipswich game, you overthought the lineup, I'll be honest. I don't think he needed to make those necessary changes. Nkunku as a striker, Jurgensen in goal. It was almost a sort of a hybrid, between a Conference League squad and a Premier League squad. And I think at those times, you've got to pick your strongest squad. You had 3 right backs, I think, on the bench that game. And I think we went with Dizazi as right back. I mean, don't overthink it. You've got to trust either Reece James, Gusto, or Achiempong in that situation to play one of them as a right back in that game, because Dizazi didn't offer anything. I think it was Madweki, I think, that played on the right wing that game as well. So it just didn't link up very well in that game. We go on to get at least another 6 or even 9 points out of that possible 12. And you're talking about a totally different situation now going into this other busy part of the Premier League season. But you spoke about Nicholas Jackson, who has had a lack of goals so far. I think he's struggled slightly with his form. I remember we spoke about it, I think, on the last episode or a previous episode about when he was subbed off against Spurs and the I don't know what you want to call it, the disappointment
Emotion.
in him.
Yeah,
the emotion
and the disappointment.
the emotion. Now, I don't know if you had a chance to listen to the John Obi Mikel podcast recently as well. He's come back and said that, we need someone that's going to be scoring the goals. He still thinks, John Obi Mikel thinks that isn't Nicholas Jackson. Nicholas Jackson isn't good enough to be our striker. He needs competition, is what the words that I think Mikel used recently. Do you agree with that still? Because I know you was of the opinion that we should be okay with Nicholas Jackson and Marc Guéhi for the remainder of the season. But is that opinion changed of yours now that we might need to consider bringing someone else in?
It's hard to pin the blame entirely on Nicholas Jackson during that kind of form, that kind of dip in form, because I think there's a lot of other factors that contributed to it. But I do agree, like I said, he only got 1 goal in 6. But you look at Erling Haaland, I think from between October and maybe mid-December, he went through a bit of a goal drought, lived like a shadow of himself. So it does happen to the best strikers. I do still think there's no way I'm going to compare Nicholas Jackson to an Erling Haaland or a Lewandowski or a Victor Gyökeres, because he's nowhere near that level yet, I believe. I do think there's a really good player there. Is he the player that can really get us into the Champions League? And once we're in the Champions League, get us to a semi-final or final? I don't know. I don't think he is, potentially. I know that I listened to the same John Obi Mikel podcast episode that you did, and he mentions both the Victors, the Victor Osimhens and the Victor Gyökeres as the 2 guys he would love to see at Chelsea. So yeah, I do think should these kind of problems persist through his form and his lack of clinicalness in front of goal, then maybe I would kind of look into the transfer market. But I don't think that should be an immediate need this January. 100% not. I think we should focus on that in the summer if it's needed. I think this January, what we need to get right is a centre back. With Badiashile out till end of February, we've got Wesley Fofana out potentially to the rest of the season. He's mentioning something in a couple of weeks, so there's still a bit of a miscommunication in how long his injury is going to last for. We've got Disasi, who might as well just be shipped out to Saudi Arabia right now. And then we've recorded Aaron Anselmino from his Mono Boca Juniors, but still uncertain whether we're going to keep him, loan him back out to a European team, if he's going to feature the youth team, whether he's ready, we don't know. And I'll be completely honest, I've never watched this guy in my life, so I don't know what he's capable of. Then we're going to talk about a bit the options we're linked to in the Premier League as centre backs, but yeah, that should be our immediate need. I do like Jackson. I did feel like we saw in moments at the start of this season what he can offer and the type of striker that we signed from Villarreal, but he just needs to be a bit more consistent, and these dips in form will happen, but now it's all about how he bounces back.
I was probably, obviously when a goal scorer is scoring goals, you want to, you back him, of course you do. But I think looking at other strikers, I'm looking even at a Alexander Isak at the moment, who is performing really well for Newcastle. Erling Haaland, who yes isn't scoring week in week out, but he's still top goal scorer in the Premier League. I'm looking at Victor Gyökeres for Sporting, who scores for fun. I think he's got 20 and 19 games in the league or something silly. Victor Osimhen, I think, has only played 10 games, I think, for Galatasaray in the league, but he's got 13 goals this season. So I'm looking at their return, per match to goals, and the ratio is really better than what I think Nicholas Jackson's on 19 games. I think 9 goals, I think, something like that. So it just isn't, for me, just isn't good enough to be the primary striker this season and next season. I don't think. I think you look at, like I said, other strikers, you even look at now Liam Delap. I just look at the physique of the ability, the holding up of the ball, just everything about Liam Delap. I'm not saying we should sign him at all. I don't think he, I did a video yesterday on our strikers, but I don't think he should be in the conversation. But I just think even Solanke for the goal against Liverpool the other day, just Nicholas Jackson doesn't have that in him to be able to hold the ball up and look for the runner of Bergvall, like Solanke did against Spurs. It just doesn't. I don't know. I just don't trust Nicholas Jackson to be the primary striker. He's still very young, still very raw. I do think he needs someone to learn from. That could be a Victor Osimhen, could be Victor Gyökeres, could be Alexander Isak. It could be any of those 3. But I also think he needs competition. I think when you're the primary person in a position. We saw it with Alonso, and I think it was Ben Chilwell at one point. When one got injured, the other one sort of dipped up a little bit. And then as soon as Ben Chilwell came back, that competition was there again. They're both fighting for the left back position. You need that in every position. You need it in midfield. You need it in defence. You need it as a goalkeeper. You definitely need it as a striker, because if you become a bit more complacent, a bit more, who's going to replace me? Marc Guéhi doesn't seem to be Maresca's plans in the league. We don't play Nkunku as the 9, who didn't work. It hasn't worked all season. We can't play Cole Palmer there. So there isn't really any other option but to play Nicholas Jackson. And when you haven't got anyone to compete with, you do probably become a little bit complacent. You think, you know what, it's just me here. You know, the manager's got to play me because there isn't another option. If he had competition, if he had a Gyökeres, if he had an Isak, if he had Osimhen, that was there willing to compete for that spot, I think we might see a bit more from Jackson. And I think it comes down to that. I really do.
We've always had it. You look at all our striker partnerships or kind of trios of strikers we had down in the last decade or so. Drogba has Anelka to compete with.
Yeah.
Then he eventually had Torres. Torres then had Demba Ba. And then he had, I think, Samuel Eto'o at one point. Yeah. Then you look after, he had Diego Costa, who had Michy Batshuayi and Loic Remy. And even Didier Drogba came back to the club to kind of offer his experience and his competitiveness. So we've always had kind of like 3 strikers to choose from. And this is probably the first season or in the last couple of years when you've been looking at like Aubameyang and Kai Havertz. We've never really had healthy competition for any of these strikers. I know that Maresca's come out recently and said that he plans to give Marc Guéhi minutes in the Premier League. Yeah, maybe that could be the competition that Jackson needs to show that his spot isn't guaranteed. So yeah, I think I could agree with what you said. You need some competition for him, and you need a world-class striker. And I always ask this question: is like, would I want Nicholas Jackson to be our striker in the Champions League final? And right now, the answer is no.
I wouldn't have him in the Conference League final this rate, to be fair. No, it's a joke. But I mean, I said it yesterday. You know, is he going to win us the Premier League? No. Is he going to win us the Champions League? I don't think he could. We can't go into next season with, and this is no criticism to Nicholas Jackson at all, but we can't go into next season. You know, you're looking at City; they're already in the stock market. You know, buying left, right, centre. Liverpool will go in at some point. I know whatever happens to Mo Salah, they're still going to try and go in and bolster their team. United will probably do the same. Ruben Amorim definitely needs targets there for him. So I do think we can't rely on Nicholas Jackson next season. Especially if we do make top 4, we have to have a clinical goal scorer. Now, let's talk about transfers. We'll come back on the striker options later on, but I want to talk about, let's forget about goalkeeper situation. I feel like we've talked that to death, but you mentioned centre-backs. We are now linked, and I think I asked you on WhatsApp, and we spoke about it sort of through our Twitter page as well, around Trevoh Chalobah. I did a video earlier this week about that on our channel. If you haven't, make sure you watch that. But Trevoh Chalobah, for me, if I was him, I'd be on my phone to my agent saying, you know what, if they ask me to come back, I'll go back, but start looking for a club for me from now. Because what's your thoughts on us even attempting to recall Trevoh Chalobah from Crystal Palace due to the injury crisis that we've got at centre-back?
It's the way we treated him is so disrespectful, in my opinion. If I were Trevoh Chalobah, why would I want to go back to Chelsea? The club that omitted you from their pre-season tour, that made you train with their reserves alongside Conor Gallagher until you could find a club to go to. And then when you realised that there were no potential suitors, you were shipped out on loan on deadline day at midnight to Crystal Palace. I think like the way we treated him has been really, really disrespectful. And I don't see why he would want to come back to a club that treated him that way. I know that he's been through the academy. He's a boyhood Chelsea fan, so I'm sure maybe deep down he might want he's got unfinished business there. But yeah, then I also look on paper. Is he better than Tosin right now based on form? Yes. Is he better than Disasi? Yes. Is he able to get on the pitch unlike Bajashir and Profana? Yes. Is he a good partner for Levi Colwill? Yes, we saw that last season when he was kind of brought back into the fold around February time. So I think it's an option, but also I'd be kind of like head in hands thinking like, this is the state of our club right now. We're calling players from loans that we were trying to desperately sell to raise money, and now we're realizing we've got no options. We were calling him. So yeah, then I'm also hearing we're going to try to recall him and maybe use him as like a make weight to get Marc Guéhi. Well,
yeah.
Who's, I think we have like a first say, given we have like some kind of clause, I think in his contract that allows us to maybe get him for 55 million, I believe. But yeah, I think centre back is something we need to look at. I feel like we had a lot of options at the start of the season, and all of a sudden now we look quite fragile and weak in that position. So yeah, I don't know. I'm keen to hear what you think about the Chalobah Guéhi kind of Palace connection and situation.
I think, like I said, I think yeah. Look, I mean, we need a centre back. We know that 100%. We need someone that can come in. He knows the team. He knows the squad. It's not like he's going to need to adapt or understand what Maresca's going to want from him. You know, he's worked with Levi Colwill before as a centre back partnership. I just think, from a player perspective, and because of how, like you said, how we treated him, if I was him, I'd be trying so hard not to come back. You know, he's playing really well for Palace. I think he's got 3 goals this season. I think he's been playing regular football, which is what he wanted at Chelsea. But from a Chelsea perspective, we do need a centre back, and he's a very good centre back. No Chelsea fan, well, the majority of Chelsea fans didn't want him to go in the first place. We wanted him to stay at the club. So from a Chelsea perspective, of course, you want him back because he's a good centre back. My worry is that when we get to the end of the summer, the first thing we're going to want to try and do is bring in another centre back. What happens to Trevoh Chalobah then? He's probably going to get sold for pure profit. So, look, I mean, from a Chelsea perspective, it makes sense to bring him back. He's still our player. He's still contracted to us. You know, we need some defensive stability in that back line, and he is experienced. We forget how long he's been in the first team for. You know, he's more experienced, I'd say, in terms of what Chelsea need than Dazazi, Wesley Fofana and Badia Shil. You know, he's got the experience. He's played at the top level for us. So for me, it's a no-brainer to recall him. We've also got Alfie Gilchrist, who is at Sheffield United, another player that we could bring back as well. I don't think we're going to be doing that. As you said, Anselmino has come back from Boca Juniors, but I think he'll be spending the rest of the time climatising to, you know, English football and understanding how the development squad will work first of all, then we'll probably integrate him next season. So, but with Marc Guéhi, I think it's tough because he plays left centre back, doesn't he, for Palace, which is what Levi Colwill is for us essentially. He is right-footed, so he could easily play right centre back. But I think again, if we're going to spend money on a defender, I want someone who's not Virgil van Dijk. Of course, we can't get him, but someone who's got the experience. We spoke about Matt Hummels in the summer. You know, go and get someone that's got the experience, who's a bit older. Another Thiago Silva that is coming nearer to the end of their career. Who, do you know what I mean? I want someone who's going to be able to do that rather than we go out and buy Marc Guéhi, who isn't the answer. He just isn't the answer for the price we're going to, for 50 odd million. Go and find someone that's got the experience at the top level. In my opinion, anyway.
Yeah. It's weird now that football's changed in a way that you consider someone like Marc Guéhi, who's been in the Premier League for 3 or 4 years as an experienced player. That's what kind of like the recruitment team look at, because I was in agreement. I was in the summer. I even wanted Delete before he was linked to Manchester United. But that was the type of profile of player I was looking at. But I think it's becoming more and more evident now that this blue coat kind of ownership after that disastrous summer window where they signed Koulibaly, Aubameyang, Raheem Sterling, and so on, that they now want to target these younger players from leagues abroad, bringing them in, you know, foster their development and then integrate them into the team if needed. That's probably what we were looking to do now with Estevao Willian, Kendry Paez, Andre Siertos. So I like Marc Guéhi. I do think, you know, we have to remember he was a Chelsea player as well.
Yeah.
Up until summer 2021 or 2022, I think.
And we was all gutted when he left as well. If you remember, we didn't want him to go at the time. Yeah.
We were really gutted. Yeah, then I think he made his debut for Palace against Chelsea, and I remember thinking, like, what could have been when I was watching him at Stamford Bridge. And really, really talented player. I remember he went on loan to Swansea and did really, really well there. Yeah. Was really comfortable at the Euros as well this summer.
He was probably the best centre back at the Euros 3 was.
Yeah. Really impressive. I think he was performing a lot better than Walker and Stones and other players. So I wouldn't mind Guéhi, but it just seems like we're so desperate right now that we're trying to recall players, sign ex-players back. It just seems like we don't really have a plan B in a way, and it's going to be a massive throwback to when we tried to recall Emerson from his different. Was it Lyon when we had Lyon, yeah, and we had I think Alonso and Chilwell out injured. No, I think there was something in his contract that wouldn't let us get him back. So we had to settle, I think, with Kennedy coming back from his loan. So that's what I kind of feel like happened with Anselmino. It's like we panicked and we just recalled this guy. We did the same with Castaday last January.
Yeah.
So, and then look at Castaday's situation now. He's not really in the fold at all. We're looking to sell him. So
Last one on, I mean, there is Tomori, who we've been linked with as well, ex-Chelsea again. So we'll have to see where we go with that one. But you did mention Cesare Casadei, who I think things have come to a bit of a stalemate with Napoli at the moment. Originally, I think we reported this week earlier on that he was expected to make a move to Torino, which I think was in the region of 10 to 12 million. But I think Chelsea are hoping to get 15 to 17 million for Casadei. Napoli, I think, came in a couple of days ago or even yesterday. But things have slowly calmed down with him. Now, it looks like he's certain to leave the club in January. It just depends on where he's going to go. Carney Chukwuemeka as well, which we'll get onto. But Casadei, another one that hasn't really been given an opportunity in the first squad. Got recalled from Leicester, played in the Conference League. But we've always said he's a good player. He's a good squad player to have in the team. But it seems like the three, in terms of Carney Chukwuemeka, Casadei and Dewsbury-Hall, will be potentially leaving the club in the winter window. Do you think that's the right call from Chelsea?
I mean, these players aren't getting minutes, and I think especially Chukwuemeka, and I'll add a fourth one into that list, Ben Chilwell. They're on big money. They're on big wages as well.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if Chelsea want to just get them off the books if they're not playing football. Casadei, I guess it makes sense. He's a bit of a squad player, sporadic player. I don't think his move to Napoli will materialise now that Napoli have signed for the billing on loan from Bournemouth.
Yes.
So I think Torino, Monza, even read, I think a Dutch club in Feyenoord wanted his signature. So that's one to take a look at. And it's interesting because he's a type of player that could potentially should have maybe have played tomorrow against them.
Yes.
So if he's not in the squad, it's very telling of where his future lies. Dewsbury-Hall, another one that's a bit of a surprise. Like, why did we sign this guy if we're just going to sell him in January? It just seems a bit of a confusing one that he's being linked back to Leicester, to West Ham. The one I'm really gutted, that was Chukwuemeka. I was going to say, I think massive talent. It just doesn't really seem to fit in Maresca's plans, or potentially again, it's the ownership telling Maresca, we need to get this guy off the wage book. He's on, I think, 170,000 a week.
Yeah, so
but he's on big money. Yeah. He's being linked to Dortmund, which I think would be a fantastic kind of acquisition from British Parliament.
Like a good English midfielder today, Nasa.
My one worry is, like we saw it, it's they get these players on loan like Sancho, like Ian Maatsen, and then they don't really have the financial power upwards to get permanently.
Yeah. Actually, I mean, they should. I mean, they're still surely they've got Haaland and Bellingham money just sitting there. Surely.
Yeah, they're selling, I think, Marlon now to Brugge, to Aston Villa. But I think that'll be like maybe a 6-month loan, and we'll see him back at Cobham in the summer if he does go. But yeah, 4 players definitely, I think, ones to keep an eye on this January. There's also talks of Christopher Nkunku on leaving the club, going to Paris, PSG. I don't know. I think the one that surprised a lot of people yesterday was, need to pronounce this correctly, Khvicha
Kvaratskhelia.
It kind of, yeah, that's the one. Georgian winger at Napoli. He's being linked to Chelsea now, alongside Liverpool and Paris. So that's another one potentially to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I'd love him. But I mean, before we get on to him, I mean, I liked him at the Euros. I thought he was brilliant. But Kobbie Mainoo, let's quickly talk. Let's talk about. I mean, that story came out of nowhere. I thought it was a bit of rubbish at the first, and then I saw Fabrizio Romano started, growing some legs to it. That David Ornstein added some further legs and feet to it, and then suddenly it grew. I don't know where I sit with this one. I mean, we just spoke about the midfield options, Dewsbury-Hall, Carney Chukwuemeka, Cesare Casadei potentially leaving the club. So yes, we're going to need midfield cover there. We know that Lavia's not really been able to keep himself fully fit for the best part of 2 seasons now since he signed for us. So Kobbie Mainoo is one that I just did not have on our bingo card. It just wasn't on the radar. What's your thoughts on Kobbie? He's a good player. He had a really good, decent enough Euros, but I think for the fee we're going to pay for him, I just don't see why we wouldn't look at some of the players we've already got out on loan first before we sign another midfielder.
Yeah, I mean, I know this is a Chelsea podcast, but from a Manchester United perspective, it makes sense now because they've signed, and they just have a
pure profit as well.
You look at their 2 biggest sellable assets, and that's Kobbie Mainoo and Alejandro Garnacho.
Marcus Rashford.
Why? I wouldn't even call him sellable right now, given their form, but I think they might be lucky to get, I think, 30 or 40 million for him. But I think Garnacho and Mainu are probably the ones that would get them over 60, 70 million potentially.
Yeah.
I like Mainu a lot. I think he's a really talented player. I watched him in the FA Cup final last season, and he kind of like stole the show. He's only got about a year of Premier League football under his belt, but the fact we're already considering like a really talented player says a lot about his ability. I really like the look of him at the Euros in England as well. I think he made his debut at the Euros, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
like in the warm-up
games, the pre-games,
yeah. But I completely agree with what you just said. If we've got the option to look at guys like Andre Santos, who's having a really good season again at Strasbourg on loan, and who's, I think a lot of clubs are ready to pinch his signature if we don't want to kind of keep hold of him. I think that's what we should be looking at now. It's like the players we have on loan. We spoke about Petrovic as a goalkeeper option a few weeks ago, and we dismissed it quite quickly. Now we need to look at like Estevao Willian. We need to look at Andre Santos. We need to look at Alfie Gilchrist. We need to look at Anselmino, these type of guys. Before we just off Ugochukwu as well, yeah. Broja, guy, I think after his injury yesterday, I think we'll be lucky to see him kick up football again in 2025. But I think before we start throwing money at a load of clubs to get players' signatures, we should look at our loan options there.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I like Mainu. I think he's a good midfield option. I just think again, are we just helping United? They've got to clear 200 million debt by the summer. They look at their prized assets, like you said, Garnacho, Kobbie Mainoo, Rashford. I'm sure will go to AC Milan, and there'll be some sort of fee involved there, whether it's a loan with obligation. But I just think, like you said, I like Ugochukwu. I think I would consider recalling him now at this precise moment to just give us some cover in midfield, especially if we lose Casadei, we lose Carney Chukwuemeka. We need some extra depth in that midfield. You look at Andre Santos, who's having a brilliant time in Strasbourg. The good thing about Mainu, I think his deal runs till 2027. So if we don't come in for him now, we come in for him in the summer. There's going to be 12 months left, or just over 12 months left on his contract. We might be able to reduce that fee down a little bit. Obviously I think his agent is clearly either looking to extend that for a contract at United for, I think, £200,000 a week, or he wants the move to Chelsea or somewhere else. But one to definitely keep an eye on, 100%. Let's talk about Nkunku, and let's talk about our attacking options as well going forward. I feel sorry for Nkunku. I really do. I think Christopher Nkunku for me is a player that we should have been able to at least incorporate into the team to some aspect, whether that's as the 10 and we move Cole Palmer to the right, or we give him the opportunity like we have for that. I think there's times where we're afraid to take Cole Palmer off the pitch, and when he's having probably not his best game, we keep him on too long. And I think sometimes if he's not effective, we should be taking him off. No one's unsubbable, if that's even a word, but he should be coming off. And I think Nkunku should have been given a lot more time. It looks like we might be losing him in this window. He's annoyed at the lack of minutes he's got. What's your thoughts on Nkunku potentially going to PSG, potentially moving to another club in Europe? A lot of talent to potentially leave Cobham.
It's a shame. It's a rotten known shame, because we signed him last summer and he was like our marquee signing, and a lot of people that watch Bundesliga, that watch French football, are telling me that we're getting a massive player, massive talent. Missed pretty much that whole season last year of injury.
Yep.
And then we just signed all these attacking players. We shifted Palmer to the 10 from his wing position this season under Maresca, and that's really limited Nkunku's minutes this season. I don't think he's done himself much favours when he's come on in the Premier League. He's looked quite unmotivated and not very, his off the ball kind of performances or have not been kind of motivating. I think it was against Fulham when he came on as a late substitute. He just looked like he was just jogging on the pitch and wasn't really motivated. But he's a really good player. We've seen what he's capable of doing at times, in even the back end of last season when he scored against Brighton, and the goal he scored against Bournemouth earlier in the season. He's a good player, and but I just feel like right now that what we're doing, the kind of the profile of players that Maresca's looking at, and the setup and the lineup and the formation, I just don't see how he gets into these teams. And like you said, I just feel like we need to be a bit braver and take Palmer off if he's not performing. Could have Nkunku as a 10, have Marc Guéhi as the striker, and Jackson as the striker. And I think the best of Christopher Nkunku I've seen is when he's played with Jackson, and they bounced off of each other and have created that link up, which we saw very briefly in the, I think, some preseason games in summer 2023. But since then, it's just been really, really we haven't really seen it much, because it's either been Palmer and Jackson, or Nkunku and Joao Felix in the Conference League, but never Jackson and Nkunku. So that's why I'd really like to see maybe one game where we go with Nkunku, Jackson, and Palmer, the three of them kind of playing together. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I would not be surprised if he's talking to his agent now, saying like, "Listen, get me a move away this January or in the summer, because I don't see where I play football at Chelsea or where my minutes are going to come from."
No, I'd agree. And we've got to remember there's a World Cup coming up in the next couple of, year or so. Some of these players that need to be playing week in, week out, just to make sure, I think Didier Deschamps, I think, is leaving the French national squad as well at the end of the World Cup. So, he's going to want to try and be in that squad, at least try and win the World Cup for France. But yeah, I agree. I think he's definitely a talent. We've seen it in the Conference League, albeit with lesser opposition that he's playing against, but he's definitely got something about him, and we wouldn't have signed him if we didn't think he had the quality and the ability to I mean, that doesn't say much. We signed Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall as well. But in terms of Nkunku, we know what he brings to the team. It's just annoying that we haven't really, a bit like Carney Chukwuemeka, we haven't really seen them play as much regular football as we thought they would. And maybe that's the only downside to that. But it could be a loan. We might see him back at Chelsea. We never know. So fingers crossed we do get to keep Nkunku. But before we wrap up on the transfer areas, we did sort of touch on it at the start about the strikers. But if you had to choose one out of this, my top three was Alexander Isak, Victor Gyökeres, and Victor Osimhen as my three in the video that I put out yesterday. If you had to pick one of those, which one would you pick out of those three if we go into the market to sign a striker?
I'll put it quite simply. I think Isak, by what Newcastle are demanding, will be 120 million, which is way too much. Osimhen, I kind of didn't like the way he handled things in the summer, asking for too much money. Then he was forced to kind of settle with Turkish Super League football with Galatasaray. Whereas I just read yesterday that Sporting would consider selling Gyökeres, I think, for 70-something million this summer, which for me is reasonable money in today's market for what was the leading goal scorer across all leagues in 2024. So yeah, the answer is Victor Gyökeres for me. And I've actually seen this guy play in the flesh a few times when I've been to Lisbon. He's impressive, really, really impressive. He went for a bit of form when he played under Joao Pereira, who took over from Amorim. But now that I think Rui Costa, the new manager, Rui Pereira, has come in, he's scored the first goal of 2025, and I think he got a couple more against Vittorio Guimaraes in their recent fixture, and I think he's even scored in the cup against Porto. Yeah. So this guy just knows how to find the back of the net, and that's what we need. So yeah, that's just Victor Gyökeres for me.
He was my first option, I think, yesterday, if I remember correctly. I think I had him. I think I had Isak second and Osimhen third. Osimhen purely just because of, like you said, how he handled things in the summer, and I just think with Isak, he's got that Premier League experience already, so you know what you're kind of getting from him. He's going to be able to fit into our team, but we have to see. I do think we need a striker, though. As we said, I think we need to get a striker, and whether that's now, whether we try and get the break closed done with Osimhen, listen, we need a striker. We can't just rely on Nicholas Jackson. But let's focus our attention to, as Maresco, as we're recording, is having his press conference, let's focus our attention to Morecambe tomorrow. Just a couple of things that are coming out very half the press, as they say. So Cesare Cassidy will not be in the squad, as you said. It's more or less the same situation as Chilwell in this moment. The plan is not to allow him in the minutes. He's basically said about Chilwell, we're trying to get rid of him. So they won't be featuring tomorrow at all. Ben Chilwell won't be in the team. He doesn't want to avoid an injury, so he's not going to be using Ben Chilwell. The same for Cesare Cassidy, will not be in the team tomorrow because there's obviously a very good chance he's leaving the club in the next couple of weeks or so. Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall, by the looks of it, is still out injured, so he won't be in the team. So what's your thoughts about Morecambe? I think they're second from bottom in League Two. They're not having the best time in the Football League as it is. They're coming to Stamford Bridge, which will be almost their Wembley, if we're being honest, and that's no disrespect to them, but they'll treat like a final. What's your thoughts about Morecambe?
Yeah, I mean, like I always say about these lower league teams, we can't underestimate them. I always have like almost flashbacks and almost nightmares of this game against Bradford. We played, I think, in 2015 in the FA Cup where we were 2-0 up and then somehow we bottled it and lost 4-2. And we were playing a team of like Gary Cahill, Perez, Mohamed Salah. It's a good team. So we can't underestimate these lower league teams. We do have a really good record in the FA Cup third round. I think we've won 9 of our last 10 FA Cup third round games. We've also been really lucky that 9 out of those 10 were at Stamford Bridge, and the one that we lost was against Man City at the Etihad. It was the one against Norwich. I think we drew and then played it at Stamford Bridge after the replay. We have a really good record, but we just can't underestimate teams like Morecambe. We played them, I think, 2021 during COVID in the FA Cup, a certain stage of the tournament, and this was behind closed. I mean, it was no crowds at the time. One fairly comfortable 4-0 goals from Hudson-Odoi, Werner, Havertz and Mount, if my memory serves me right. So a lot has changed at the club since that game, players and having crowds now back in the stadium. I'm expecting a good game, an entertaining game. I still think we'll win relatively comfortably. But like you said, having, the whole shed full of Morecambe fans and having like you said, it's going to be like their big away game of the season. No matter if they draw, lose, win, they're going to treat it like it's a cup final. So it's going to create a good atmosphere for them. And we've just got to bring our A game and just get a comfortable result. I don't want a 1-0 win. I want like a good result to give us the confidence then to go into the game against Bournemouth and knowing that these players know how to find the back of the net. And then hopefully we could just go on from there. But yeah, like I said, at the start of the recording, I think this FA Cup game's coming at the right time now. Bit of a cup competition just to take a break from the Premier League and give some of the players that have been playing a lot of football rest and maybe rotate slightly more. You mentioned 2 names there, Chilwell and Cassidy not going to feature. No surprises. Bit surprised like Dewsbury-Hall because I feel like I saw a picture of him in training the other day. So I don't know if Maresca is just saying that or if my games up in a mind games. Yeah.
And it's more Cassidy.
All right. You never know. Mourinho would definitely go there. But yeah, like I said, we just can't underestimate any opponent nowadays.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think they're second from bottom. So, Morecambe haven't had the best start in their domestic league, in League Two, but they will be relishing the opportunity to knock a team like us out, the FA Cup. We can't expect it's going to be a walk in the park. We will have to. I personally would not I wouldn't change the squad too much. I know we've got a game on Tuesday, so we're going to have to rest a lot of our expected team that will play in a week coming up, but we still need to put out a very, very strong squad because I can't remember if it was Barrow or I feel like it was maybe Plymouth. There was a game a couple of years ago and it was at Plymouth. It was a difficult game. And I feel like did we not have extra time as well? I feel like we had a bit of...
It took us to extra time and then Alonso scored. It was Azpilicueta or Alonso scored in extra time and then Kepa saved a penalty and last minute was extra time.
Yes, so...
tough game, really tough game.
Exactly. So I'm not saying that will happen again tomorrow, but we just have to be careful not to... we've had a bit of a break from our last game. We've had a 4 weeks rest as well. I think the squad haven't played, obviously, we've not been in the Carabao Cup. But we have to make sure that whatever team goes out tomorrow, that they hit the ground running, they treat the competition. And I think Maresca needs to do that. He needs to treat the competition with the respect it needs, not putting out the from goalkeeper to striker full of kids, put out a decent squad. But like you said, we beat them 4-0 last time. You're right with your selections or your goal scorers. They were correct. But yeah, I'm confident. I'm just trying to think of a lineup that we will go with. It's going to be tricky now. Now that it is hard.
It's really hard because of what Maresca's just said about the options we have. And bearing in mind, we've got Bournemouth on Tuesday. You want to find that balance between making a few changes, but also having a few experienced players in the team.
Well, goalkeeper. Let's start with our goalkeeper.
Yeah.
Are we going to go with Jurgensen in goal, or because he tends to play obviously the Conference League games? I would say that Maresca will treat this sort of similar to that, where he'll probably put out almost the B team of Chelsea. So I think he'll start Jurgensen tomorrow.
I'd agree. I'd have Jurgensen in between the sticks.
Now, this is where it gets tricky for me because I was thinking about this before we started recording. Now, I did see a couple online say they would start Reece James in this game, and he has been on the bench the last the two games for us. But is this a game you start Reece James, or is this a game you bring him on and give him 20 minutes near the end of the game?
I would start him. I think, like we said in like previous recordings, if you're good enough to be on the bench or fit enough to be on the bench, you can start. And Maresca even said he was planning on giving him minutes against Palace, which never happened.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's something to change tactically throughout the game, or if it was just something he said in the pre-match conference, and then I wasn't loyal to his word. But I would have James the right back. I would have Achampong, and I hate to say it, I would have the Sassy as the other centre back. And then I would have Renato Vega as the left back.
Well, we didn't actually talk about him in the transfer area, but Renato Vega, apparently a bid was rejected from Wolves today for Renato Vega. So whether that they haven't met the valuation or the fact that there is some truth that he might be going to Wolves, obviously they've got a new manager there. They do like their Portuguese players over there as well. So we don't know. But I would I start Vega? I would start. Would I start Vega? Yes, I'd have to, because you want to rest Cucurella. We've just been told Chilwell will not be in the team, so it leaves us no option but to start him, doesn't it? Unless we put one of the younger players in there. But no, it's a good back line. I think I would probably start with Gusto over Reece James. I mean, I want Reece James to succeed so much at Chelsea. I really do. And I'd hate for him to go into this game, start the game and come off injured by halftime. I think I'd give him 20 minutes rather than start him and give him. I think your understanding is he'd get 60 minutes at least if you start him and then he comes off. I'll do the other way round.
Yeah, or would you have Achampong as the right back and Reece James as the right centre back, which he's played as a couple of times, which requires maybe a slight year's right angle.
Yeah, good point. No, I wouldn't start him. I'd keep Achampong right centre back with. I'd go. I'd like to go with Tosin. I'd actually probably start Levi Colwell. You know, I would. No, I would. I would start Levi Colwell. I know this sounds so strange. They've had a week off. They're going to need some minutes under their belt. You can make changes in the second half. My backline is going to be slightly different. I'm going to go with Gusto, Achampong, Levi Colwell, Renato Vega.
Yeah, choosing your starter mints doesn't get easier.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. They both need a rest. I mean, we Caicedo definitely needs to rest tomorrow. Enzo, I think, will have to play. The reason I would rest Caicedo is because I think he's more important in the league games than Enzo. Not to say that Enzo isn't, but we would be struggling, I think, if we didn't have Caicedo for Tuesday's game. The question is, Lavia, does he start? Or is he ready to start the games?
I think he's had a few training sessions now. A couple, like he's been in training for a week and a half, 2 weeks. I would have Lavia alongside someone. I don't know yet if it's going to be Chukwuemeka or if it's going to be Enzo Fernandez. But I think for me, you've got to start Lavia tomorrow, give him minutes, and maybe have him come off the bench against Bournemouth, or even maybe start him with Caicedo as a right back. It's TBC, but yeah, I think I'll go with Lavia and Chukwuemeka for tomorrow.
I'm going to go Enzo. I'm going to go Enzo Lavia in the midfield. I think we still, like I said, I still think we need to give some of the minutes to the players that will be playing Tuesday. I don't know if we'll. I mean, there hasn't been anything come out of the press conference so far about whether Chukwuemeka is on the radar, like for Dortmund. But it seems like any of those players that are in the shop window might not get a start tomorrow. So yeah, I think that would be my two midfield. The three in front of that midfield, who are you going for from right to left?
So I would have Nkunku as the 10, Joao Felix on one of the sides, and then Tyree George on the other side.
Yep, I'd go with that as well. I'd probably put Felix on the right, Tyree George on the left. I'm trying to think what game it was now. It would have been the Conference League game.
The Shamrock, maybe.
It was Shamrock. It was at Stamford Bridge, and I think Tariq George switched to the right in the second half, and I thought he was more effective on the left. So I'd probably keep him on the left. I thought he was better on that side. And the good thing about that, you can swap them. You could swap all three of those really and play them. They're quite versatile, so they can all play in those areas. So I'd agree with that as a front three. Striker Marc Guéhi. Surely it's got to be Marc Guéhi as a striker. Yeah.
It's got to be, after everything we said about competition for Jackson on today's recording, it's got to be Marc Guéhi. And I expect guys like Harvey Vale and maybe Keanu Dyer to be on the bench for tomorrow as well.
Yeah, Harvey Vale. I think another player that it's just come back to me, Raksaki.
Yeah, I was going to mention his name. Yeah.
I'm changed my mind, actually. I think... Yeah, no, I won't change my mind. I'm very indecisive today, you can tell, but I'm going to put him on the bench. Harvey Vale on the bench. We have Nicholas Jackson. I think Cole Palmer I expect to see on the bench as well. I don't want to see any of those players rested. I think they still need minutes. I know we've got a game on a Tuesday, but yeah, there needs to be an intent from Maresca to put things back on track, not just in the FA Cup, but I think for the Premier League as well. And I think some of those players do actually need to step up, regardless of where we are in the league. They still need to step up in the FA Cup, and they need to show Maresca that he can actually trust them. You used the word earlier on about a lack of trust. And I think that goes for some of the players that the Cole Palmers, the Pedro Netos, the João Felixes. I think it counts for them as well.
100%, yeah. These guys, there's like opportunities for them to prove themselves, being like, I'm good enough. I can start. Give me minutes against Bournemouth. Give me minutes the following week against Wolves. But if they can't do it against Morecambe, then they're not going to get their chance against the big Premier League teams, are they?
Yeah, 100%. I agree. But prediction-wise, scoreline-wise, are we going big scoreline?
Yeah, I'm going big. I'm going for the same score that we had against them in January 2021. I'm going 4-0. And I'm going to go over Tariq George goal on his first Chelsea goal. I'm going to go with that.
Yeah, I like the sound of that. I think 4-0 is a good shout. I think it could be 5. I think we could even go one better. Just thinking about our how well we've attacked at the first start of this period of the season in the league. I think as long as defensively we are solid, which I think we will be against Morecambe, who, as I said, have struggled in the league to score goals. I think attacking wise, Marc Guéhi will have a brilliant game and score. I think Tariq George can get on the score sheet. I think João Felix normally thrives against lesser opposition, so he might score as well. But I think 5-0. I think a 3-0 comfortable half time, score another 2 goals, bring on a Reece James, give him 20 minutes, or if he starts, take him off. But yeah, I think we'll be comfortably into the next round of the FA Cup come Sunday afternoon.
The road to Wembley starts tomorrow, 3 p.m.
The only thing is you're not allowed to go to Wembley if we get to the final. Yeah. I know what happens when you go there with the curse, but no, it should be good. There's some good fixtures. I'm not sure when the draw must be Monday. There must be a game on Monday evening. Let's quickly find out before we wrap up.
I think there is a
Millwall, Dagenham.
Palace. Oh yeah. Of course, that's on Monday, given the South East London club or East London clubs, isn't it?
Yep. So Millwall, Dagenham, I'm sure that the draw would potentially be done before that game, actually. So let's hope we're in the pot. Let's hope we're in our numbers in the bag for the draw. The next round, we can get into the fourth round of the FA Cup. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know your predictions. Let us know your lineup as well, and also the transfer speculations. Give us your views and inputs there. Don't forget, audio version of the podcast is on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Again, hit the notification bell to make sure you don't miss an episode. Theo, as always, thank you very much. Been a pleasure. Feels good to be back after the sort of Christmas break. Let's hope for a good positive return to Chelsea in good form and take that into the league on Tuesday as well. Thank you all for watching. We'll be back soon.